Hello, hello, hello. Coming to you from Clearwater Beach, Florida. It is the live show for, what is this, June 16th, 2021. I hope everybody's doing well. I have an excellent show prepared for all of you tonight. I have a lot of spectacular questions that I'm looking forward to answer. But all of you should know, though, that my assistant Cherie is with her daughter this evening. It's her daughter's birthday. So I'm kind of flying solo. So if we have any trolls or anything, I am going to have to be the one who takes care of that. So we'll just see how it goes. Usually I can keep talking and Cherie takes care of any trouble, but that won't be the way it is tonight, but I totally understand. So if I get delayed or anything like that, I apologize. CR saying, "Does the sound low?" I don't think so, CR. I don't touch the microphone settings at all, ever. So not sure what to tell you there, CR. But I got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. Like I said, going to answer some questions before I get started. You know what I like to tell you to do. Give this show a thumbs up as you are watching. There's a thumbs up right there. Make sure you give this live show a thumbs up if you're watching right now, or if you are watching in the replay, whatever kind of device you are using, laptop, tablet, phone. Some of you I know even watch on your TV. And please give this show a thumbs up. And if you're not yet a subscriber to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the little bell so that when we upload videos such as this one, you will know when that's happening. In fact, I think that the bell even goes off when these live shows start. So that reminds you, in case you forgot that it's Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, the bell will tell you school is in, or the show is on. So let's see who is here. Suzanne first. Linda. Is that Snell or Sneal? S. Neal. Hello. Must be a new person. Awesome. Hello, Charlotte. Gail is a little busy multitasking. Hello, Sharon. And Crystal is really sucking up to the host, which is allowed. Hello, CR. And Mimi, Jill, Delane, Kathy LaFord, Marge. I have a great question from Marge tonight. Boston. Hello, Boston. Marlene, good to see you with the thumbs up. Thank you. And from Manitoba, Canada. Never been there. Only been to Ontario in Canada, Marlene. And Susan, thank you everyone for joining in and watching tonight. Have some good conversation, I'm hoping over the next, usually do this for 2 hours, and I surely have enough material to go for 2 hours tonight. So let's start here. Of course, I usually, when it comes to topics, this is where I always usually start. Usually start with the personal stuff going on with me, anything that you might find interesting. And I always usually talk about my disc golf stuff first. Played very well on Sunday over at Taylor for the club. In fact, I had the best score there Sunday, and that won me a couple dollars. I'm going to guess. I wonder how many players were there on Sunday. I don't think it was. Usually we have around 50 some, but I don't think it was that many on 50 is 50. Maybe in the 40s. About 40 some players there, and I had the best score. Hello, Carrie. And a shot of 4 under. Should have been 5 under. And so that was nice. And I have to be one of the oldest players who play on the club at the club on Sunday. And so to shoot the best score is certainly noteworthy. So I was real excited about that. So I got to collect a couple dollars. And then I played doubles yesterday. My partner and I would say I played okay. I missed a couple putts, but we as a doubles team did not play very well. So that's okay. But I don't know when I'm going to play again, practice again. Won't be tomorrow. Too much going on tomorrow. Maybe Friday. But actually, a week and a half from now, I will be in Orlando. This tournament that popped up at the last second, I guess what you might call the last second. And so, not this coming weekend, not within a couple days, but next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend, however you define that, I will be in Orlando. I guess that would be I'm going to go over on the 25th, play on the 26th and 27th. At a place called Turkey Lake. It's a park you actually have to pay to get into, and there are 3 disc golf courses there. I've played on them many times before, although there has not been a tournament played there since 2019 because of COVID and other things. So that's where I will be playing on the 26th and 27th. I already have my Airbnb reserved over there, and I'm looking forward to getting over there. And then the weekend after that, I just have a 1-round tournament about an hour away. So those are some things that are happening in the disc golf world, my disc golf world, for the next couple of weeks. And in fact, a week from now, so after the live show next week, at midnight Eastern time, registration will start for what they call Amateur Worlds, which are also being played in Orlando, and I certainly want to get in on that. So after the live show next week, I will be patiently or anxiously sitting at my laptop waiting for the clock to get to midnight when the registration starts, because it could fill up very quickly and I don't want to be on the outside looking in. So that's what's going on also next week for disc golf. Who are some other people that have got in here? Carrie, my assistant Carrie. Hello, Carrie. Louise, coming to you from the UK. And thank you, Crystal. Karen, what's going on? So everybody's here tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Let's move on to this. I don't know how many of you have Disney Plus, but the new series Loki has started. Loki, of course, is Thor's brother. Thor being the good guy, Loki being the bad guy. And they have a series, I guess you'd call it not a TV series, but a internet series on Disney Plus, which I have. Regarding some story regarding Loki and something that happened during kind of a branch off type of thing that happened during Avengers Endgame. And it's been pretty good so far. 2 episodes in, they come out on Wednesdays. And 2 episodes in, I think there's going to be 6 episodes. It's pretty good. Of course, we could go back to the beginning of this year when WandaVision, the Scarlet Witch and Vision, that was a weird, wacky series that I liked. And then it was Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I thought was pretty good. And so now we have Loki and, of course, Tom Hiddleston playing Loki as usual. And then Owen Wilson playing the other lead character. His name is Mobius M. Mobius, and he's doing such a spectacular job. I think it's so far it's very well acted. It's interesting, and I'm really enjoying it. So if you've seen it, don't give anything away. If you're watching it, also you can say if you're liking it or not, but please don't give anything away in the chat. But so there you go. And I'm not one to really follow. I never watched Game of Thrones or The Walking Dead. I've never seen any of those episodes at all. But I am a Disney Plus member. I love the Pixar movies. I love old school Disney movies like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So having Disney Plus makes sense. And I love these series that are, that have come out. Melissa. Hello, Melissa. Are you watching on TV? I hope you are. And Spicy. Good to see you. And hello, Valerie. And Deborah. Hi, Ed. Well, hello, Deborah. Hi, Deborah. Hi, chat. So that's Loki. Disney Plus seems like a good deal to me. What is it? $8 a month or something like that. And I think that's spectacular. In fact, I would say that I also have Netflix. I think it is also a very good deal, especially if you like Star Trek. Moving on to another topic. My weight kind of leveled out in that 176, 177 spot. The trend is still like ounces, going the right direction, but I really can't complain. I think I'm doing very, very well with this diet. I continue to not cheat or anything. 2.5 months in, it's not been that difficult. And so it's been all good. And I still continue to say that I can feel the differences out on the disc golf course. And I do feel lighter or something. And maybe that's maybe that's why I hit that ace 2 weeks ago. I don't know. Maybe that's why I played so well on Sunday. I don't know, but maybe just psychological. But the weight loss, managing a diet continues to be very easy for me, and I don't have any, my mind's not on cheating on it or anything like that. In fact, today I had a salad from Chipotle. Had a steak salad with some beans and some medium hot sauce, and it was spectacular. Just so good. What is everybody saying in here? My nose is itchy. Valerie says, I know I stand alone, but I love Disney's Fantasia. I like it too, Valerie. Spicy says, Hulu for $2. I've never checked out Hulu. Spicy. And Spicy says, that's great. I need to get in shape as well. Well, anytime you want to start, Spicy, you can do it. And Fishing, welcome. Good to see you tonight. Hello. Marge says, hey, you should try the pizza with cauliflower crust. I don't think I would like it, but it was surprisingly good. Some brands better than others. I can't eat pizza, Marge. I know you're saying cauliflower crust, but I'm sure there is some dough in it, and I cannot eat any carbs. Of course, bread is carbs. I'm not eating any carbs, so that might cause a problem. Thank you, Spicy. You're very generous. Thank you. And maybe I should bring this right up right now. That what Spicy has done there is hit the super chat button, which is the little gray square with the $ in the middle, and monetarily contributing to the program. Spicy, thank you very much. Keep it up. I'm going to keep it up. Thank you. You're very generous. Thank you. Moving on, we always somehow one way or another talk about music. During a lot of times, the topic of music comes up, usually because of something that I'm listening to or someplace I'm going to be going or something's going on. And I've decided to go back and start listening to all of the Led Zeppelin albums, going back to the first one and going in order. And I just started doing it today. So Led Zeppelin 1, Led Zeppelin 2, Led Zeppelin 3, Led Zeppelin 4, the whole way up through their last one, which was called Coda, that came out in 1982 after John Bonham died. That's when Led Zeppelin broke up. So, I am a Led Zeppelin fan, but I have to admit that I kind of got burned out on them growing up in Western Pennsylvania. They were on the radio all the time. I have, and I think I still do have the CDs of the Led Zeppelin box set that came out in about 1990. Had the crop circles on the cover. And just after a while got burned out. I wouldn't say necessarily avoided them, but just not high on my list for a long time. But I thought, you know what? I think it's time. So I'm going to go back and listen to all of their music that they've put on their albums again. And all of their albums are on Spotify. I am a Spotify subscriber. And so I'm looking forward to that. So I'm on Led Zeppelin 1. Babe, I'm going to Leave You, Dazed and Confused, Good Times, Bad Times. And then once again, we'll go the whole way up through Coda in 1982. So about 13 years of music. And as I was listening to Led Zeppelin 1, as I was coming back from Chipotle, I was reminding myself all this music came out before I was even born. Led Zeppelin 1 came out in 1969. So the music written, recorded, played in concert before I was ever born. I was born August 1st, 1970. So it's so crazy. It's just crazy. So I'm getting back into a little Led Zeppelin. Of course, I'll continue to listen to all the other music that I listen to. But a song that has been stuck in my head recently, maybe some of you know this song. It's a more recent song and it has nothing to do with hard rock. Is this song called Lean On by Major Lazer. Really a techno dance, electronic dance music, EDM song that came out in 2015. I just don't know where I ran into it, but it's that song has now been stuck in my head for a little while, and I don't mind it. It's a nice tune, but I found myself playing that quite a few times on Spotify over the last few days. Like when I go and do my ab workouts on the landing by the elevator, that's what I've had on the last couple nights. The song Lean On by Major Lazer. I think its video on YouTube has like 3 billion with a B views on YouTube. So it's crazy. It came out in 2015, very popular song. And I heard it somewhere back at the time. And then just recently, somehow I swerved into it and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that song. And so you can maybe check that song out if you've not heard it before. It's called Lean On it's like a DJ and Diplo and all this, but it's Major Lazer and it's sung by this woman who goes by the name Mo, like O, and she sings it. So you can check that out. What are some of you saying? Led Zeppelin always makes me think of the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Yeah, when he's playing that song when they're on the date lane. Yeah. I do not believe that I would ever play Led Zeppelin on any date. Linda asks me, how many vinyls do you own? That's an easy answer, Linda. 0. I never owned any records. That's a little before my time. I was in the cassette into CD era. In fact, I will tell you the first CD I ever bought was Van Halen's 5150. So in about 1985, 86, something like that. Kathy says, love the Led Zeppelin movie. The song remains the same. I've actually seen that, Kathy, but it's been years and years and years. But I love the song remains the same. The album, the song are really good. Blaine asked me, have you heard some of Wolfgang Van Halen? No, I have not. Robin coming in from Australia. Well, good day. Good day, Robin. LaFord says, Wolf's music is brilliant. First heard it on Howard. That's news to me. I guess maybe I should check it out. Louise, love the 80s rock bands. Great music and lyrics. I agree, Louise. We can agree on that. Charlotte, I always loved Van Halen, and I love Valerie Bertinelli so much. Yeah, because Eddie and Valerie were married at one time. Carrie says, what? I had vinyl as a kid. We had records in the house growing up, but they weren't mine. They were my parents'. I can remember Charlie Rich. I think there might have been a very early Chicago album. I mean, they had a stack of them. I don't know where they are now, but that was not my music. That was their music. In fact, in looking back at it now, maybe I should have taken more an interest in it. I don't know. Deborah says, I remember listening to a lot of Black Sabbath. I would not say that I listened to a lot of Black Sabbath, but I do like a few tunes. Stairway to Heaven. Not a big Stairway to Heaven fan, Mimi. When it comes to Led Zeppelin, it's like songs like In the Evening, Black Dog, kind of the harder stuff, maybe. The Immigrant Song, that's kind of maybe more my style. Stairway to Heaven, of course, it does get fast eventually, but it takes a little long to get there. CR said, I bought a Michael Jackson record, Thriller, I think. Yeah, that's my era, CR. Great Lord says, I'm a metal guy and a fan of the show. I gotta love this. Are you more into Kiss or Metallica? Goat Lord, certainly Kiss. In fact, I was just listening to Kiss, some of their greatest hits yesterday or the day before on Spotify. I like some of their lesser known stuff like Christine 16. I Want You. Rocket Ride. So I actually saw Kiss in concert back in, when was it? 2014, 2015, when they were with Def Leppard. Fantastic show. So I like a lot of King of the Nighttime World, God of Thunder, all that stuff. A lot, of course, all their popular stuff. Tears Are Falling, etc. But I like some of the lesser known stuff as well. Goat Lord. But I like Metallica, but I got to tell you, I like some I like some of the early stuff. You get into the 90s, I start to lose interest. I think that is with a lot of people. No. LaFord says, yeah, I had vinyl. I was born in 69. My first was Blondie's Heart of Glass. I like Blondie. See, I knew we'd get onto this. We'd get into music. We just may never get away from it. Linda says, I have many heavy metal bands, but I like Barry Manilow. Oh, no. Scary Barry. That's funny. Charlotte loves Kiss. Melissa says, we could buy 45s when my dad took us to the record store. I remember buying Jump Van Halen. Oh, my. It's a 45, Melissa. Wow. I can remember roller skating to Jump by Van Halen. And being that I'm more of a DLR fan than Sammy Hagar fan, I guess that makes sense. Gotcha. They get a little disco at times, though. Goat Lord. That's true. They, on their, what was it, Dynasty album with I Was Made for Loving You. They did. But I'm not anti-disco. In fact, there's a lot of disco music that I like. I'll admit it. I don't mind the Bee Gees. Saturday Night Fever, great music. But probably my favorite Kiss song is either Dr. Love or Strutter. Strutter is such an awesome tune. So I hope I'm proving here that I know my Kiss at least a little bit. Let's see. Luis says, "I Was Made for Loving You" by Chris. That's one of those disco era songs, Louise, but that's okay. Yeah, I love talking music. So I would have to say Kiss easily over Metallica, Goat Lord. But in my world, of course, Iron Maiden rules all. And then Kiss is probably, as a band, is certainly in my top 10. Certainly. Metallica would probably not be in my top 10. Def Leppard's in my top 10. Judas Priest is in my top 10. Van Halen is in my top 10. AC/DC is in my top 10. Just to name a few. Who else might... let me see, maybe throw out one more name. Deep Purple could be in my top 10 too. Even when they did go to Glenn Hughes and David Coverdale, probably in my top 10 as well. Probably. Even their newer stuff in the 80s, Perfect Stranger, Knocking at Your Back Door, King of Dreams. Even that music I like, getting up into the late 80s by Deep Purple. That's just me. Spicy, love the Metallica that I know. Yeah. I love Metallica, but it has to be the older stuff. Kill 'Em All, Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning. Enter Sandman and everything are fine, but after that, just kind of lost interest a little bit. Whiskey in the Jar. No, can't get into that. Okay. So there's some music stuff. And then as far as the other personal thing goes, I do want to, once again, I know a couple weeks ago I mentioned this and I want to do it again because there's another episode out. I hope you will check out my friend Suzanne's show on Amazon Prime. It's called Suzanne's Saturday Night Scares. And where she's like a host, if you remember, go back to the 1980s with like Rhonda Shear and USA Up All Night. This is kind of what Suzanne's doing with this show. She hosts it, and there's like a horror movie plays, and then towards the end, she interviews an actress. Maybe she'll have some actors too, eventually. But an actress from that era that was in many horror movies or whatever. And for the second episode of her show on Amazon Prime, she interviews Morgan Fairchild. I've not had a chance to watch it yet, but I have downloaded. I bought it and downloaded it. But I know the first one was really good. So I hope that if you have Amazon Prime or Amazon or whatever you have there, that you will check out her show, Suzanne's Saturday Night Scares. She is Suzanne is a longtime friend of mine. In fact, we might have even been an item at one time, allegedly. I always play coy with that. But I think this show is really good. As soon as I found out that she was doing it, maybe about a year ago, I told her, I think this is perfect, Suzanne. You should be out in front of the camera. And I think she does a great job, even though for the last 25 years, she's been behind the camera producing and everything. But she's now out in front of the camera. Again, she got started as an actress. And I think she's better for it. So please check that out. Suzanne's Saturday Night Scares on Amazon Prime. Spicy Smashing Pumpkins. I love Cherub Rock is my favorite Smashing Pumpkins song. REM, not a fan. Red Hot Chili Peppers. I like some Red Hot Chili Peppers spicy, but no. Guns N' Roses. I like Guns N' Roses, but they really only have like 1.5 good albums. They certainly can rock. Appetite for Destruction is probably one of the greatest straight rock and roll albums of all time. But, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, after that, I don't know. LaFord says, I have Prime. Going to check it out. Thank you, LaFord. Please do that. Suzanne Saturday Night Scares. Axl Hill's really gone downhill. Well, he's lived a hard life, Charlotte. Thin Lizzy. I know Thin Lizzy. Stone Temple Pilots. I like them. Green Day, Radiohead. See, now we're getting into the 90s. And I like some of those groups for a while. But man, that music is depressing. Like, Alice in Chains and Soundgarden is pretty good. But man, the music in the 90s from a hard rock point of view, kind of depressing. Great band. Okay. Sadly, you're right about GNR Ed. Well, I'm not saying anybody has to agree with me, LaFord. That's the way I see it. I was not a big Guns N' Roses fan. Fishing says yuck to all. Let's move on before I fall asleep. LaFord, I think that Guns N' Roses, I was not a big fan at the time. I think I respect them more now as musicians, but there's still only so many songs that I like. You Could Be Mine from Terminator 2, a fantastic song. Rocket Queen, fantastic song. A lot of spectacular music. But they burned bright very quickly, and then whoosh. So I don't know why that is. I don't know. Whereas a lot of other bands, sold a lot more records, a lot more albums, had a lot more songs that were popular. Def Leppard, Whitesnake, AC/DC, etc. That's just the way it is. I do like Queen, Linda. Some. Canned Heat. Okay, I know, kind of know. Canned Heat. Some Queen, Linda, but not probably hard enough rockers for me. But I can see why they're popular. Certainly excellent musicians, certainly unique. Freddie Mercury, fantastic as musicians, but some of their music just not really my style. Gail, thank you very much. Thank you for your generosity with the super chat. Thank you so much. All right, let's move on from the music. Like I said, every time we get on the music, the time goes by very fast. But let's move on to the meat of the show. And I got a lot of questions to answer from people tonight. So we need to get right into this. As I usually do when we get into the meat of the show, allow me to talk about the Chance Englebert poll. Of course, that was this past Friday when his mother, Dawn, was the guest. And easily a majority of you, decided that Chance was murdered. I guess you're thinking that somebody in Bailey's family, not happy about him walking off or whatever else, tracked him down that evening, that night, and did something to him. Okay, fishing. So this is one of those situations where the group poll was one thing. The think tank, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, if you'd like to join the think tank, decided the exact opposite. It was kind of a variation on a theme. It was either an accident, he's walking along during the storm, a branch comes down, hits him, and he just hasn't been found yet, or he tried to walk across the Platte River and got swept away. I'm thinking that only one or two people in the think tank believe that Chance could have been murdered. For me personally, if you've watched the YouTube video, maybe it's not a surprise. What I described in the YouTube video, explaining the locations, the videos, and where he was seen and everything, that pretty much encapsulates my theory, is that he was walking to get out of the area. He was following Google Maps, a walking path that would have taken him along Owl Lane, and he was thinking he'd get to that bridge, and there'd be He would get to the river. There would be a bridge there, and he would cross it. He gets there. There's no bridge. The storm is coming in. He doesn't want to backtrack the way he came. And so he decided to chance it and cross the river right where that a bridge allegedly is, but it's not there. And so that is my theory. It's open to a lot of different interpretations. The only thing I would say about Chance being murdered is that I just don't know how any of them would have tracked him down. I don't know what the motive would be. And it's, it seems to me otherwise kind of thin. But maybe, the tough part is that if he did go into the water, then we might have a situation like Shane Fell, or if you believe Jake Latchley went into the river, these possibilities of these young men who went into the river, that these disappearances might never be solved. So, and that's very sad. But that was what happened with the Englebert poll. The discussion group decided that Chance was murdered. The think tank and myself had a completely different opinion. I do like the Scorpion, Spicy, kind of come and go with them, to be honest. Spicy, sometimes into them, sometimes not into them. Carrie says, I think he fell into the water. Catastrophic event with his phone and storm. Yeah. Okay, Carrie. Spicy, bad English, not into them. Carrie says, the phone being a catastrophic event was what did it for me. Okay, Carrie. Marlene said, would Chance's body not been detected eventually, though, in the water? Well, we have to figure in, Marlene, that the storm was coming in from the west. The river would have certainly, upped. Its flow would have increased. I'm no water expert, but the storm is coming from the direction that the water flows from. So I wouldn't he have been detected, or he wouldn't have been found? I just don't know. I think there's good reason to believe that he wouldn't. Kathy says, I feel Chance slipped into the water and was swept away. Yeah, that's what we talked about, Kathy. That's what we talked about. So that is the Englebert poll. Chance's disappearance, as I always say, I will continue to serve in any capacity that Dawn wants. Whatever position she wants me to fill in helping her out, just talking, suggestions, etc. We do have to remember this is a fairly new disappearance. It's not even 2 years old. And I would not be surprised if a year from now we have more information than we do now. I think this is what our experiences tells us. This was an older disappearance, then I would think that maybe as far as information goes, we might be all tapped out. So we just can't tell. Goat Lord, water is a weird thing, almost a living thing. A lot of things disappear in water. Some are found, some aren't. Yep. So we have some loose science, I guess you might call it. But when a storm's coming through, then a river is harder to predict than a large body of water like the Gulf of Mexico, like that. Rivers are much harder to predict. Luis says, seems odd. His phone was on the porch, but then it was gone, taken by someone in the family, I believe. Just don't know about that, Luis. He had his phone with him. So I don't know. And if they really did something to him, would he really leave his phone sitting on the porch there? Marge, thank you very much. You're very, very generous. I cannot thank you enough, Marge. Thank you. And in fact, that reminds me, why don't I just go to Marge's question right now? Thank you, Marge, with the Super Chat contribution. Marge asked me a very good question. It was sent to me through email. I don't know if she thought that I was going to make it a topic for the live show, but as soon as I read it, I told her that I would like to talk about this because this topic does come up once in a while. I wouldn't say once a month, maybe once every couple months on the program. I think it did come up in Kaya Taylor's disappearance most recently. Here is Marge. Here is what she wrote. And I love the little jumping person in that picture. That's kind of neat with the heart. That's neat. Okay. This is what Marge wrote to me. I have a question for you. After listening to some of your episodes, there were families talking about their flyers being taken down shortly after being put up. It seemed to me that they felt this may be someone with a bad intention or someone potentially involved with the disappearance. I was speaking with a friend who works with the state of Colorado, and he was telling me that one of their jobs is to remove any signs that are on the roadway, i.e. homes for sale, garage sale, gun shows. I asked him about missing persons signs, and he said technically they would have to remove them. Marge says, I personally find that terrible. He also said that in the city, they have workers that would be tasked with removing signs that were not on personal property. Apparently, having things stapled to a power pole is not allowed for safety reasons. Have you heard of this, Ed? I could not believe it. You would think the city and state could, at the very least, contact the family and let them know a better place to put the info out if they are, in fact, removing their flyers. I'm curious about your thoughts. And I did respond. Marge did get my email, and so I'm just going to kind of tell all of you what I wrote back to her, with even being maybe a little more complete. Hello, Jody. Hello to you with the hand. Probably another disappearance that occurs to me that was like this was Nieko Lisi's. In fact, I have something to talk about with Nieko Lisi's disappearance tonight. But his was one where his mother, Monica, went down to the Franklin, Tennessee area to put up flyers, and she said that she put them up, and a couple days later, she was back through that area, and all of them had been taken away, torn down, and she was very suspicious about this. However, even at the time that I spoke to Nico's mother, Monica, for that episode, which I think goes back to 2018, I'd already heard about this before in some other disappearances. And because of that, I was inclined to believe that this was not something of a nefarious nature. There were not, the people who were involved in Nieko Lisi's disappearance, and I think there's good reason to believe there were people involved in his particular disappearance. It's hard for me to believe that these people were walking, driving around town, and when they'd see Nieko Lisi's picture, they'd go and rip it off. It's always hard for me to believe. So, being that I had heard about it before in a variety of areas in the United States, then I hear it about Nico's, and most recently in Kaya's, I'm inclined to believe in all of these situations, it's exactly what Marge is talking about. There are sanitation workers, public workers, whatever I'm not saying their role is to go around and look for stuff to tear off telephone poles. But in some capacity, they're supposed to look out for this. And when they see these things, they rip them down. Now, Marge, I certainly get your point of view, and maybe a lot of people's point of view, that, this isn't about some garage sale. This isn't about a gun show that's, down at the end of the block. And I've seen the signs just like all of you have. This is something different. It's way more important. This is vital. And I get that. But, the truth is this. Government workers who are doing that are not getting paid to make those types of decisions. All right? Because they are getting paid to take things off of telephone poles that aren't supposed to be there. And if they don't, they get in trouble. And they can make the argument that Marge is trying to make, that other people might make. Well, shouldn't we leave those up because these people were missing and everything else? And the answer is going to be no. Now, the reason that all of that stuff gets ripped down is a variety of reasons. If you let one thing put up, then you have to let everything be put up. And unfortunately, a lot of this stuff, it eventually does blow away. It creates trash. It creates a nuisance. It starts blowing around. You know, and we want our cities to be clean. So this is the kind of thinking that goes into that. All right. I realize it's very easy to say that exceptions should be made here, exceptions should be made there. But that's just not how it works. That then seems going to be a system that's going to be rife with abuse. And before you have it, everything is being allowed to be put up everywhere. All right. That's what I think I know about human nature. Now, having said all of that, and what I also, I think I wrote to Marge is that, let's not, see what do they say? Let's not see the forest for the trees. The truth is this, and you know me, I'm for what works. I'm not for what doesn't work. The truth is that, putting those flyers up on telephone poles and everything, I don't think has ever solved the disappearance. All right, that's what we need to keep our minds on. And so all the time that these people are putting into putting these flyers up, they're doing something that the odds of it being successful are like 1 in a billion. And so then you have to start thinking, well, there are only so many hours in a day. There's only days in a week. Should I be spending time doing something that only has a 1 in a billion chance of working? The answer is probably no. All right. This is maybe in contrast to dogs. I'm not a big believer in dogs. You know that how many times dogs are used and they don't find anything, but at least you can look at dog stories, and there are at least a few stories out there where the dog has tracked somebody down, but it is rare. It's rare, but it has happened. So in those situations, maybe it makes sense under certain circumstances for dogs to be used, even though the odds are not very good, but they're surely better than 1 in a billion. So what I would say is when it comes to something like this and a loved one goes missing, people should concentrate on doing those things that they should avoid doing the things that have no proof of working. And sticking flyers up on telephone poles and everything else probably is not the best way. All right. I know it makes them feel like they are doing something. But being that Marge is even asking the question shows you the problem. They put the signs up, they get ripped down, and then what do they start thinking? Man, somebody must be involved in my loved one's disappearance. Even though I think as a whole, as we look at this phenomenon as a whole, missing persons flyers getting ripped off poles, I think we can safely say that's not what's going on at all. But this is just one more thing that then gets into their head and they start being paranoid, and that helps nobody. So, on one hand, I can see the argument that exceptions should be made. On the other hand, I think we're talking about something that doesn't work anyway. If we were talking about something that actually works, then I would be probably much more energetic about trying to change the status quo. I'm not that energetic about changing the status quo because I just don't think that works. I don't think there's any proof of that working. I realize they're trying anything, but anytime you're spending time doing something, you can't be spending time doing something else. And you have to start figuring, is this the best use of my time? Kaya Taylor went missing over there in Plant City. This is an area that I know decently well. I drove over there. I took videos over there, etc. It doesn't surprise me that putting those signs up and everything has not found her. That's not a surprise to me. I know it sounds cold. But I think this is the way we just have to start thinking about things. This should not be what you might call a shotgun approach. We're just going to throw everything at the wall. And we have enough disappearances unsolved in the United States to know that doesn't work. That approach doesn't work. So it's time to rethink some of these things. And one of those things that might need to be rethought is printing out a bunch of flyers, 1,000 flyers, and just stapling up everywhere. You're much better off. People are much better off, instead of flyers, just going door to door, knocking on doors like they do, during election time, knocking on doors, talking to people face to face instead of putting flyers up. If they want to spend their time walking along the streets of a community where somebody went missing, it's better to do that than put the flyers up. Get in people's faces, ask them questions, where they were, what do they know about the neighborhood? Whereas flyers, it's just a person's picture. Just an idea. So, Marge, that's my answer. I don't know how many other people who cover missing persons cases would give that answer, but that's how I see it. I think that there's enough evidence. If we're going to make a scientific approach to solving disappearances, I think there's enough evidence to show that it doesn't work. Ford says, well, I had no idea that happened with signs. Makes sense now. Carrie says, unfortunately, corporations and governments, rules are rules. Linda says, people post so many things on telephone poles that they overlap. Lost dog, garage sale, missing persons. People tend to ignore them. That's another thing. People can't ignore you when, of course, they maybe not answer the door. But if you go up and knock on their door, that's harder to ignore than them just, eyes on the road driving down the street. And as Linda is saying, you get numb to these things. You get numb to them. Just CR says, I do not even read the signs unless there is a photo. Carrie says, I think they just need to do something. Well, let's just start talking about maybe things that work. I have no problems with people doing things. But I'm starting to, you have to start wondering, are these things that have any history of working? Fishing says should have a public place for them. They need to do whatever they feel necessary. Well, then the issue is, where would that public place be? And it's probably not going to be on a very valuable piece of property. It's going to be somewhere that maybe a lot of people don't go by. Because if it was in a place that was valuable, there's probably already a business or something set up there, and they don't want those posters put up because, once again, it generates garbage. It generates stuff flying around when the wind kicks up. Louise says, do the flyers get taken down if the person is found? Probably not. They're like a lot of election signs, Louise. I don't know if you have that over in the UK, but you have an election, and weeks after the election, the candidates, signs are still sitting there. Now, there is a law that says that, a campaign has to go out and get those things after, but after the election's over, if they lose, the hell with it. Once again, this is not a factor of government or society, civilization, urbanization, or anything. That is a factor of human nature. It's something we can't change. Carrie says, before social media, yeah, maybe it helped to get the word out, but now social media would be better than that. I agree. Hello, Jay. Good to see you. Delane says, I think asking for permission to put flyers and store windows in the area the person frequented would be helpful in letting people know that the person is missing, but not spending days on end posting. Are any of these store owners going to allow you to do that? Carrie says, we put up a ton of flyers for Dana Bruce, not one thing. Started a Facebook page, tips every few weeks. Yep. Same with David Emerson, Carrie says. Marge says, thank you, Ed. It would be nice if they offered electronic billboard space for a certain amount of time or space on a community website. Maybe they do, Marge, but This is now we're talking about commerce. We're talking about people with money making money off their electronic billboards. How much are they supposed to offer for free? Carrie says you get numb to them is why Amber Alerts have such strict requirements. Yep. The fewer the alerts, the more people pay attention to them. I think I was talking about this a couple months ago. When it came to the terror alert system that was started after September 11th, eventually nobody gave a dang. Nobody cared. There was what was it? Orange, yellow, red, green, brown, whatever it was. And you'd wake up and look at the TV and the terrorism alert, is right here. And in retrospect, it was probably zero. Probably. And I think people maybe thought that. And that's why it just went away. And, you can only tell people to stay alert for so long. And when nothing happens, they start thinking, I think they're full of it. Jill says, after reading all the Brandy Myers stuff and they did it go house to house, it was really interesting, their perspectives of what they saw and what they didn't see. It gives a lot more information. Yeah. CR, if I find a loose pet, I tend to look around at poles for signs and such. And there very well may be the case that when you're looking for a lost dog or cat, the posting some signs does work. I think there's proof of that. I just don't think there's any proof of that when you're looking for two-legged animals, humans. Louise says, you need a picture to show people, though. If the flyers get torn down, it's an endless battle. Maybe billboards, newspapers, TV, social media, crime watch, knocking on doors, CCTV. Hello, Laura. Laura is here a little late. Well, you're allowed to be a little late. I'm the only one that is required to be on time, Laura, if there's any question. Linda says the Amber Alerts are also canceled as soon as they are found versus the flyers that stay out. Delane says, I think locking on doors can be an asset, especially if law enforcement is doing the knocking. Jill, you are generous. Thank you, Jill, for the super chat contribution. Love that little, what is that, a hippopotamus or something? Hype. Thank you. Thank you. So that's that topic. I continue to say that the first thing people should do when they discover that a loved one is missing is you make a list of all of the people who might have wanted to make that person disappear. And it may only be one person. If it was a married woman, then I'm guessing maybe the first choice might be her husband. You go talk to him. Before you ever file a police report, you think she's missing, go find out where he was and where she is and what his story is. Because once the police get involved, then that person might, get a lawyer, might start telling stories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. First thing, that's the first thing should be done. Because what happens is usually, of course, the police don't get involved for several days, and then it's very hard to determine if a person is telling the truth or not about an alibi. Whereas if you do it right at that second, instead of many days down the road, you can tell very quickly if that person is not telling the truth or not, because it's right then after it happened. Down the road, people can tell all sorts of stories because it's hard to go back a week and to try to determine where somebody was. D is here. D in the house. What's going on, D? Let's move on. So that was a question. That was a good question from Marge. So let's move on to some other things. Season 2, Volume 2 is now out. It is now available as an ebook and print book on Amazon. This happened just a few hours ago, but I do have to admit something. And I have to apologize. It's also been recorded for Friday's episode, is that I did not end up using either cover that was posted in the discussion group. I had a little poll going. And I would say that the cover with the police search, the green cover, I guess you might call it, we ended up not using that. And I'll tell you why. The problem is that what I would like to do is have a theme for each season. And so far, the theme, like for season 1 into season 2, was like files or filing cabinets. Where are those books? I have them right here. That's a filing cabinet. Those are filing cabinets, different colors, shades, kind of geometric shapes and things. You can tell each book is different from the other. These are filing cabinets because the books are essentially files on missing persons cases. Well, the problem is that the guy, his name is Jonathan, who was working on the book. He and I could not find enough pictures that you could use that would show police in searching situations. We can change the colors and all of that. Even if they all look green because they're looking in the woods, we can change it to blue or something. That's no big deal. But we just couldn't find enough unique pictures that, unfortunately, when you go to a photo site where you can buy pictures for fairly cheap, all of those pictures are staged. They aren't real police people. They aren't real investigators. They're just dressed and they're like, it's like a JCPenney's catalog. And I'm not doing that. So we just couldn't find enough real life pictures that we had permission to use. We probably could get permission, but it would take too long and probably cost some money, and I'm not doing that. So what we decided to do is just continuing with the filing cabinet concept for now. It may change to somewhere down the road, but if we're going to change themes, we have to be able to change it to a theme that we can replicate for a while. That was just not one that we found we could replicate under normal conditions. Whereas there are all sorts of pictures out there on all sorts of sites where you can get pictures of filing cabinets and different colors and kind of cool looking stuff. And, there's it's a bunch, hundreds. Not so much that for showing people searching in real life circumstances. So that's why, unfortunately, we could not go with the cover that was picked. The book, however, season 2, volume 2, is now out. It's fantastic, of course, and you should be looking for more of them. I think I'm going to continue to work with Jonathan. I'm going to be talking to him tomorrow about a long-term plan. And so I'm hoping by the end of the year to just about be caught up with all of the books, trying to get at least into cases being covered in 2021. It's going to take some money. It's going to be a lot of work on his part, but it has to get done. So I'm very excited. So I'm thinking by the end of the year, Unfound should have like 30 books on Amazon or something like that. It's going to be crazy. And of course, the guests get free ones. I'll be sending some out to some Patreon members, etc., etc., etc. But I'm hoping you will consider buying 1, 2, or maybe all of them. Charlotte says, Amber, I believe that April Pitzer was murdered. Yeah. Hello, Amber. Carrie says, well, I'm glad Jonathan worked out for you. I know it was a stressor for you. These books were stressing me out, Carrie. I don't get stressed about many things, but this book situation has been bothering me for a while. And I just decided 2021 is the year I'm getting caught up. I don't care how much it's going to cost because I don't have the time to do it. So I have to pay somebody else who knows what they're doing to do it. Luckily, this young man is the son of a woman who I've gotten to know very well, who was an editor for me years ago. So it's working. I think it's going to work out. And all I have to do is continue to get the material to him. The transcripts, he'll fix them, the links, the pictures, and all of those things. And I have to do some writing. As long as I can do all that, I think this is going to happen pretty smoothly. Charlotte says, I don't believe April would have left her mom, was sending money for her to leave. Charlotte says, I totally understand, Ed. I got stressed about things I need to get done too. Yeah, don't we all? I don't want to say stressed as in staying up at night, but it was something that bothered me. I think that the books are still a fantastic idea, and it just bothered me that I could not execute it the way I wanted to because other things, kept popping up. And that can be exasperating. So season 2, volume 2, probably tomorrow. I will post a link on Twitter and everywhere else on Facebook to the books. And I'm hoping you will consider checking them out. Next, Dr. Telesco, as I've already announced, I think last week, no meeting, no show next week. We were supposed to do a show next Thursday. That's not going to happen. She has things going on. I have things going on. And we've had a show, quite a few months in a row now, going back to last year. So we will reconvene in July. In fact, I think she's already picked out a date. I think it's the last. Let me think about this. My birthday, let's see here, 18th, 25th, the 3rd, 4th. My birthday is a Sunday, so that'd be 1st. So July, maybe 27th, 28th, 29th, I think is going to be the next show with Dr. Telesco. We haven't picked out a disappearance yet, an episode yet. We have a lot of time to do that. But next Thursday, no show. I know I announced that at one time, but that's not going to happen. All right, let's say, allow me to answer another question. This is from Jill, and I know Jill's in here. In fact, she contributed through the super chat. Thank you, Jill. When encompassing a variety of different missing people, what vulnerability sticks out that puts a person at a higher risk to go missing? Follow up, what kind of vulnerability have you noticed does not get the amount of attention as it should? Mental health, substance abuse, dementia, domestic violence, divorce. Choose your own adventure. I continue to say, Jill, that relationships are the number one cause of disappearances. We talk a lot about husbands doing something to wives, and in fact, that very well may be the situation for this coming Friday's disappearance, which I will talk about before the show is over. We've talked about a lot of other disappearances like Rosemary Rapp, Danielle Sleeper, Angela Green, Marion Hurley, Christy Nichols, many like this in Unfound's catalog. Of course, we've covered over 200 disappearances. So I don't know. That is the most common reason. Now, why are relationships the number one cause? Is because you have a lot of passion. There is a very thin line there in some relationships, not all relationships. In fact, we know that people are getting married and divorced all the time, but that doesn't mean there's any violence. People grow apart. They have money issues. One cheats. All the things that has nothing to do with shouting or, violence, physical violence, mental violence, or emotional abuse, anything like that. But still, relationships are the number one cause because when they go bad, they can go really bad. This is why is it that it seems, one of the big reasons that cops get shot is because they show up to domestic violence calls. That's one of the most common ways that police officers get shot. Showing up for a domestic violence call and the bullets start flying. That is not, it's not unusual. So we shouldn't be surprised then that relationships are the number one driver of disappearances. I think what happens in many of these situations is that, and it can go the opposite way, women making men disappear, maybe like Tyler North's disappearance by his ex-wife. But I think what happens is these men kill their wives, not because they hated them, just something that went too far. And they think, dang, what did I do? And they cover it up. I didn't mean to do it. I'm not a bad person. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't want her dead, but my passion got the best of me. Something happened that I, didn't intend to do. And so they scramble and then they cover it up. And that's why you get, I think, so many weird stories, crazy stories. Jeff Green, husband of Angela Green stories. Because they didn't plan it. So the vulnerability, Jill, I think that, especially when it comes to women, you have to make good decisions when it comes to the men you're around. The tough part is in most of these situations, the men who we believe to be suspects in these wives' disappearances have no criminal records. I don't think Jeff Green does. I don't think Marion Hurley's husband did, or any of these others. But in the conversations that we had with the people for these particular disappearances, there were other things going on. The guy, although he may not have had a criminal record, was known as being very controlling. Didn't want his wife driving a car, didn't want his wife going out into the workforce. That's not going to appear on some government document or anything, but these are the things that women should watch out for. And if you're in that type of relationship, and it's easy for me to talk, you should dump the guy well before you ever get married to him. But I think that these are the types of men who are most likely to do that. This is, I've kind of joked about it. Like, I'm a big fan of the sitcom Friends, mainly probably because I'm in that generation. When that show came out, and whatever ages they were supposed to be, was just a couple years older than I was at the time. And in, for example, Jennifer Aniston in real life is like a year or two older than I am. And in fact, in the show, they were, when they joke, when they were doing those episodes about turning 30, that's about when I was turning 27, something like that. But I've always said Ross Geller has all of the makings of an abuser, a guy who would lose his mind and kill his wife. Possessive, controlling, paranoid, etc. If you're dating a guy like Ross Geller, you shouldn't be. Seems that so. These are those vulnerabilities. Being vulnerable to a personality such as that. And I think what happens is that I think a lot of women in the beginning think, oh, he's so worried about me. Look how concerned he is. And that's not what it is. It's just the beginning of the controlling nature. So that's what I would say. And so the follow-up, what kind of vulnerability have you noticed does not get the amount of attention it should? I think it's this, Jill. I think the general public thinks that the most common reason for disappearances are stranger on stranger crime. I think on Unfound, we've proven that that's not even close to true. I think a lot of people would believe that most disappearances have to do with drugs. Certainly quite a few do, but it's not number one. Or money or things like that. It's not. It's relationships. And it even could be, we might even go further and say, it doesn't necessarily, when we say relationships, it doesn't necessarily even have to mean murder. For example, Jake LaChale, I know a lot of people do believe that he was killed. I'm not so sure about that. I could see a situation where he's in a relationship with, I forget her, his, the mother of his child, and she sounded crazy to me. And he might have just had enough of her, and she just drove him to kill himself. It's not murder, but it's certainly a bad relationship. So, the vulnerability is people not noticing that they are in a relationship with somebody who's not good for them. That's the vulnerability. And that, to me, that has something to do with self-confidence, self-esteem, self-image. What kind of vulnerability have you noticed does not get the amount of attention as it should? Relationships. I think that the public, and this is why I continue to talk about it, I think the public would be stunned to know that relationships are the number one cause of disappearances. In fact, relationships are the number one cause of violence everywhere. So that's my answer, Jill. Not sure if that was the answer you're looking for, but I'm going to stick to that. Charlotte says, which case was it where the woman disappeared and her husband said she left her trailer and then he had gotten rid of a picture that had been hanging on the wall? Man, Charlotte, was that Danielle Sleeper? Was it Christy Nichols? She left the trailer and gotten rid of a picture that had been hanging on the wall. It just, plus he had painted and gotten new carpet or something like that. Charlotte, Angie Arnell, that may be it. I will look it up. Yeah, please look at it. Angie Arnell, of course, her husband went to jail for 4 years for a disappearance, and she's still not been found. Don't even get me started. Yeah, the husband's name is Mike Yarnell. Yeah. Louise says, I was listening about a man called Redwine. He's being blamed for killing his son, who was about 10 years. I think the boy's parents were divorced. They say he killed the lad because he saw pictures of him. I don't know about that. Hello, Robert. Am I really cool? Okay. I'll take that, Robert. Thank you. Amber says, what is going on with people? I don't know. So, Jill, that is my answer. Just have to make better decisions when it comes to the people who are around you. Let's move on to this. I told you that I had some Nieko Lisi news currently, and I think we are in this 48-hour period right now in the Franklin, Tennessee area where he disappeared. Of course, his truck was eventually found there, parted out. There's now a 48-hour reward. Somebody's put forward $30,000 for new information leading to finding Nieko or finding the people who caused his disappearance. Nico's is one of those disappearances where it's hard to really determine what happened. I don't think he ran off. I think that there was foul play, murder, misadventure, something like that. I think that, I hesitate to say that it was necessarily on purpose. I don't know, but it's still very unclear. And maybe some of you who are newer to the program and haven't had a chance to listen to his episode, he's from New York, gets in the truck with this guy. They drive the whole way to Tennessee. And then the guy comes back. Nieko disappears. His truck is missing, and then his truck happens to be found in somebody's garage. I forget even how later it was. Was it months later, years later, something like that? And it's still very unclear what could have happened that quickly. Could it have been about drugs? Maybe. I don't know if there's any proof of that. Is the reason that they went from New York to Tennessee, were they bringing drugs down there? Once again, no proof of that. Just looking for some reasons here. Why did the one guy get to go home and Nieko didn't? I don't think anybody knows that. And I think if you go back and listen to the interview I did with his mother, Monica, I don't think she has any answers either, just suspicions. So, but you know how I feel about rewards. This goes back to what I was talking about, putting flyers up. No proof that flyers work. No proof that rewards work. And I think more likely what's bound to happen is you put the money out there and you just start getting a bunch of kooks, hoping they get lucky. They need the money, so I'll just start calling and maybe I'll get lucky on something. That's all it is. It's no different than when some prisoner says that he knows something about this. I heard something, the cellmate told me this, real nebulous story. And what's the guy get? He gets to get out of jail for a while and, gets to play mind games with the people who are questioning him and might get a nice lunch or something. And then he's sent right back to his cell and he didn't know anything the whole time. Very common. This is what I think of when it comes to rewards. Maybe something good will happen. I don't know. But so few rewards have ever been given out for any sorts of crimes. Maybe like art theft or something. But murder and disappearances, I'm inclined to believe that it's very, very rare. Kathy says, didn't Nieko supposedly go to Minnesota before Tennessee with his buddy? I think it was Michigan, Kathy. Minnesota would be way out of the way. I think it was Michigan, Kathy. They went to Michigan, then south to Tennessee. Robert says, do you think the Charlotte Nagy murder? I don't know anything about Charlotte Nagy, Robert. And if it was a murder, it's really not what I do anyway. But the name does not ring a bell to me at all, so I really can't say. Marlene, good evening. There's Marlene. #1 poster on the Facebook page. Hello. Thank you. We have another Marlene in here, if you can believe it, Marlene P. We have another Marlene who's currently in here. I think she might be from Canada. Carrie says, I think inmates mostly do it just to get out early. I think you're right. Let's move on to another question. And this comes from Ryan. How much time do you typically spend talking with an unfound guest before recording the interview we hear on the podcast? Ryan, I don't know if you're in here, but maybe you'll watch later. It varies. Generally, I would say 3 conversations. The average is 3 conversations, totaling probably 3.5 to 4 hours before the interview takes place. So you have those hours, and then what's the average length of an interview? 1.5 hours? Usually longer than that. So all in all, probably I talk to a guest on the phone before the episode comes out about 5.5 hours. That would include the interview. I think that's a really good guess. Of course, there are some that's really going to stretch that number out. You know, I talked to Tom Brown's mother, Penny, many times before I interviewed her. Valerie Sorrell's mother of Cameron Remmer, I talked to her many times, many hours before I interviewed her for the episode. So those, of course, would skew the average at least a little bit. Kelly Bruce, who was on, with Brian Schaefer, I've spoken to her many times about Brian's disappearance before she was on the program. But I would think before the interview, about 4 hours. Ryan, I think that's a pretty good guess. Louise says it's getting more common, the parents killing their kids. It's every day some sicko kills their kids. Or is it just making it into the news more, Louise? I really don't. I don't think that we should just go by what is getting news coverage. I think that we would have to, really look at the stats for that, Louise, before we make a firm conclusion whether parents are truly killing their kids more. Marlene says, I'm Marlene #2, Ed, and I'm okay with that. Yes, from Canada. Okay, Marlene J, Marlene P. Good to have you both. Marlene's kind of a unique name, so to have 2 of you in the chat tonight is interesting. Okay. So Nieko Lisi, let's move on to this. Jody Husentrut, a couple new episodes of her, the podcast is out. Find Jody, the Find Jody podcast. I hope you are listening to it. It's one of the few true crime podcasts I would recommend. But the last 2 episodes, one had to do with the white van, two witnesses seeing it that morning. One guy who was driving by, and then they also interviewed a woman who was living across the street who allegedly saw this white van parked on the street the morning that Jody disappeared. And then the next episode, the most recent episode, is an interview with Jody's downstairs neighbor, the guy who lived right under her. And what is interesting to me is that this guy was not home that morning. He was out of town. He was taking some type of test in California for something. In whatever career he's in, he had to go to California to take a test. Of course, we have to remember it's mid-1990s. I'm sure maybe today that test could be taken online. But he had to go to California to take a test. And wouldn't you know, that day or a couple days that he was gone was when Jody got attacked. And I have to admit, it does make you wonder. I'm not saying this guy is lying. In fact, I totally believe him. Because he even says during the interview that had he been home and that happened, he surely would have heard it, because she got abducted right outside the window of his apartment. Like I said, he lived right under her. So you get to wondering, did somebody know this guy? Did somebody know that this guy was not going to be at home that morning? And maybe that was the reason that this person chose to wait around for Jody as long as I guess it's a guy, he did. Because this person knew that this was the one chance to get Jody, because her downstairs neighbor wasn't there. I think you should listen to the podcast and decide that for yourself. You would probably not be surprised that I sent these exact same ideas to Caroline Lowe, just asking some follow-up questions regarding all of that. Another angle, what can I tell you? I've been following Jody's disappearance since the late 1990s. I was one of the first persons to sign up for the form on the old findjody.com website going back, 17 years or something crazy. And I've never heard that her downstairs neighbor was not there until this recent episode. So, it is something to think about. Once again, I would urge you to go to findjody.com and listen to the two most recent episodes, or it's on Spotify. It's all on all the popular podcast sites, and listen to those two episodes and decide for yourselves what you think. Marlene says, I just heard that last part of rewards. No one on disappearances ever collects that I've ever seen. Me neither, Marlene. Marlene, you're thinking about moving to Florida? Really? Florida's a fantastic state. Louise says, I'm going by news coverage. There's one a week at least. Different countries. A young man near where I work was murdered on Monday, got stabbed to death. Sorry to hear that, Louise. So please check out the findjody.com podcast, especially the last two episodes. I've listened to every episode. I think they're doing a nice job over there, and even I am learning some new things about her disappearance. Let's just keep I have a bunch of questions. I have at least 3 more questions to answer, so I might as well go to another question. Elena, are you in here, Elena? I know you usually are in here, but I'm not sure. I don't know if I've seen your name tonight or not. Elena asked me, we know polygraph results are unreliable in court, but I wondered if the police still use these to back suspects into a corner, such as in the Chris Watts interrogation. Police are allowed to lie to a suspect about the results, and I wondered if this was a reason why the police pushed forward with a polygraph test rather than the results of the test. Well, I'm going to be honest. I know who Chris Watts is. I know the generalities, but I've not watched. I guess his interrogation is on YouTube or something. And I'll admit I haven't followed it. Just going to admit it. So I can't speak to that, Elena. But I continue to say that whether I was guilty of a disappearance or not, the answer to taking a polygraph test would always be no. Sheree and I have talked about this many times. Both of us, and she's not in here tonight, spending time with her daughter on her 21st birthday. Congratulations to her. The answer would always be no. I'm not taking a polygraph test. I'm not taking a test. I'm not doing it. Why people do it? I think that they're hoping that they just happen to pass it. If they're guilty, I think they hope they're just lucky enough to pass it, and that'll somehow get the police off their back. That's what I think. I also think that they know that they're guilty, but they think by not taking a polygraph test that it even makes them look more guilty. But I don't think what they don't understand, and I of course want them all to be caught, thrown in jail, and served to the fullest extent of the law. And I hope, of course, if they killed somebody, I hope the body is found, etc. But they shouldn't be taking these tests. They just shouldn't. They shouldn't be doing it. So, Elaine, if the police still use these to back suspects into a corner, such as in the Chris Watts interrogation, I know what I would say if, and I think everybody thinks that Chris Watts certainly did what everybody thinks he did. I would just continue to tell the interrogator, polygraphs don't mean anything. Polygraphs don't mean anything. They don't mean anything. They don't mean anything. The truth, the most famous story is Aldrich Ames, probably the biggest spy in U.S. history, worked for the CIA or Naval Intelligence, was given lie detector tests every 6 months to make sure that he hadn't, become a spy for the Soviet Union. He passed every test, every one of them, by given to him by the CIA. Didn't mean a thing. He was a spy, and he's still in jail, prison, penitentiary, forever. And being that I know that, that's what I would be saying to the cops if they were trying to talk to me about a polygraph test. But I know history, and I'm guessing maybe most of these suspects don't. As far as being painted into a corner or backed into a corner, Elena, I think there's enough evidence to show that these people are not backed into a corner. That's why so many of them are still walking around free men in a lot of the disappearances that we've covered on Unfound. They've taken polygraph tests, they've failed them, and they're still walking around free men. So, I just think, I think the polygraph tests are inconsequential. They are a tool like anything else. They can't be used in court. So, they're certainly good for other things. I think that some people are given polygraph tests before they get certain jobs and things like that. Maybe that works. But for the hardcore stuff in our society, like spying and murder, it doesn't seem they work too well. Carrie says, lie detector, quote unquote, not so much, but stress analysis tests are still used. Louise, I think if you're a cold, calculated murder, you could bluff the polygraph anyway. Yeah. Waste of time anyway, as it won't stand up at court. Yep. Marlene, yes, we are eventually. You're going to move to Florida. Okay, Marlene, that's been the plan for a while now. Arizona was our first choice since we had lived there many moons ago. Anyways, my ex-boss and her family live near Orlando. I love it. Okay, Marlene. Louise says, look at the John Benet Ramsey case. Her parents failed them twice. I didn't know that. Carrie says, Sean Atkins failed the polygraph 10 years ago in reference to Haley Dunn. Disappearance, was only arrested 2 days ago. Yep. Polygraph tests. I mean, we talk about them. I think that you, the public, deserve to know if a suspect or somebody's been questioned and we're given a polygraph test. I think you deserve to know that, but I think what they also prove is none of these tests eventually lead to a conviction in a disappearance. Let's move on to this. Trying to lie. Hey, Leah says, hey, I finally caught the live finally. Well, good for you, Leah. Good to have you. University talks. I'm going to be having a conversation with a professor on Saturday. Going to try to line up me going to a university in Louisiana in the fall, maybe October, November, depending on my schedule, depending on their schedule. And this was something that was supposed to happen in the spring of 2020. So going back to like April of 2020, didn't happen because of COVID. and I want to get that rolling again. So this might be a good place to start. So I think, once again, if everything goes right, that I will be up in Louisiana sometime in the fall to speak to some classes about missing persons cases, try to give them a little education using some of Unfound's disappearances as examples. So I kept saying, as soon as this is over, we're going to get back to it. Well, this is we're getting back to it. I'm very excited about this. I know that I'm going to be nervous, even though I do the show, I do the think tank. I've went to Amarillo in 2019 and spoke to everybody there and everything, but I'm sure I'll be nervous the first time around. But I am going to video it. And of course, that'll eventually end up on the YouTube channel, this YouTube channel that you're on right now. I'll probably go on the website. And so I'll be nervous and excited at the same time. This is really, I've talked about this with all of you for a long time. This is one of the directions I want to take Unfound. What university is it? Well, we're not just going to get into that yet. When we actually get a firm date and everything else, I'll let you know. I don't want to jinx it. Carrie says narcissists take polygraph tests only because they think they are the smartest people in the room and can't fail. Okay. Another question from Linda, and I know Linda is in here. Linda asks, why do you think it's easier to believe people disappear because of bad people rather than just walked away? Well, Linda, I continue to believe a large majority of the disappearances we've covered are foul play. Maybe not as many as I thought 3 years ago, but I still believe a large majority of them are foul play. So it makes sense to think that bad people did cause these disappearances, because I think a majority of these disappearances are caused by bad people. And I think there's enough proof to show that. But I think, Linda, the problem is that the problem starts when you start assigning foul play to disappearances where there's no signs of any, or it just is hard to imagine. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. To give you one extreme, I don't think anybody's crazy for thinking that Angela Green was killed by her husband, Jeff Green. For what reason, we don't know. But the reason we think that is because of all the stories he told after Angela disappeared. Okay, that's why. It's a very extreme example. No physical evidence of that, but his own behavior, his words. Only somebody who did something wrong would act like that. And it makes all the sense in the world that there was foul play involved. It was not Angela walking off. On the other hand, we might take a look at maybe like Trevor Nichols. Remember, he was a soldier in New York. He was supposed to be getting transferred to Kansas, and allegedly he got on a train and was never seen again. Now, a lot of people think that foul play happened in his circumstance. One of his other soldiers allegedly saw him at the train and everything else. And people think, well, maybe something happened to Trevor too. But the problem is there's no evidence of that. It's hard to imagine why anybody would have killed Trevor. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but there's nothing obvious to believe that. But still, people believe that. Why? Well, I think it's just, I think there's just part of us that just can't believe that can really happen. I think that, I think that's all it is. We can't believe that a guy, was he married? Was he, he was a father and he was a military member, and we hold those people in such high regard, and he seemed like a good guy and everything, that he would just walk off. Whereas I think what we're learning is this happens more and more than we think, because sometimes these people are found out in the middle of nowhere, usually by accident, and there's no signs of foul play. Nobody thought that Crystal Morrison walked off, but she did. So, and there were a lot of reasons in her situation, circumstantial, to believe, well, maybe, she was into drugs at one time. And who really would call someone to pick her up? Why would she call somebody to pick her up and not be there when the person showed up? Well, somebody obviously snatched her. That's not what happened. So the problem starts, Linda, when people start to assign foul play to disappearances that have no proof of that. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it's always weird to me when people think foul play happened when there's no reason to, there's no evidence of that. Even like, being that everybody know Tom Brown's, I understand why people think that Tom Brown was murdered. I don't know if there's any proof of that, but I understand it. Why? His remains were found 12 miles from his car, and it's hard to imagine he walked all that way. So I understand it. The problem is, it's very possible that he did walk those 12 miles and died for some reason that just can't be calculated, because they only were able to recover 30% of his remains. So why, Ed, do you think it's easier for people to believe people disappear because of bad people than just walked away? Because we're not inside those people's heads. The fact is this: if people do walk away, it's because of something that's going on in their head. There's no good reason for anybody to walk off. There's no good reason for anybody to commit suicide, but people do. And we have a hard time understanding it, but in their minds, it makes sense. That's what we have to remember. It may not make sense to us, but the reason they're doing it is because it makes sense to them. And that's why it's so, and we think because we don't see a reason that these people who walk off or commit suicide, they mustn't have been able to find a reason either. Well, guess what? They did. So, and it's kind of, I think, very conceited on our part. It's like, what Frederick Hayek might call a fatal conceit, is that we think we understand these people than they understand themselves, and we don't. And so these types of disappearances where there's no signs of foul play and that it seems like somebody walked away, the reason they're hard to understand is because we can't get inside these people's heads. We just had David Schrader for a couple weeks ago. It seems that he walked off. I don't know why. I don't know why he acted crazy the night before. It might have been because of diabetes, or he might have been just choosing to do that just because he chose to do that. We aren't in his head. No matter what he was going through, health issues or whatever else, there was certainly no reason for him to walk off and leave his family behind. But that's probably what he did. And I'm sure when he did it, it made perfect sense in his mind, even though the rest of us might think it's crazy. So I think the reason, once again, why do I think it's easier to believe people disappear because of bad people than people just walking away, is because we just fully don't understand why people do this. So it's easier just to think that they got killed. Because we understand people killing other people. Well, we don't necessarily understand it, but we understand that humans have a violent tendency. We can be violent. We get angry. We get passionate. We understand that because we feel it on ourselves, but very few of us ever feel like walking off. And because we feel that way, we don't think that other people can feel that way. That may be it. I'm not a psychologist. It's just, once again, my experience from over 200 disappearances now. Louise says, take some books, or no. Marlene says, take some books. I probably will take some books with me, Marlene. I probably will. Does Ellie get kids to take a polygraph if they have done a crime? Probably not with a guardian, a parent, or a lawyer involved, Louise, being that if they're underage. Leah says, I seriously doubt you'll be nervous. This is natural for you. Well, I'm glad I make it look natural, Leah. Louise, you'll be okay once you get there and start chatting. Can't you bring someone with you for moral support? I'm sure probably I'll find someone to go along. Maybe my brother will go with me, or I suppose I could set up the tripod for the camera and everything on my own, but it would be nice if I had somebody else doing that. So we'll see. Marlon says, I know it's old now, but I am baffled by Brian Schaefer's disappearance. Aren't we all, Marlene? Linda says, update, our local news will be covering Craig Fear's disappearance tomorrow evening. I saw that link. In fact, I think it's posted in the group, Linda. So that is that question. What do we got? We got 15 minutes. Okay. Just wanted to read this story. You know, we hear so much about cars being found in bodies of water these days. Well, how about a missing plane being found? This story is out of Northern California. Allow me to read it to you. I think it comes from ktla.com. And I not only the story, but I'm going to expound on this idea a little bit afterwards. A small plane that crashed into a Northern California lake with 4 people aboard after a midair collision 56 years ago, 1965, may have been found by underwater surveying technology. The discovery was made in drought-shrunken Folsom Lake when technicians Tyler Atkinson and Jeff Riley of Seafloor Systems were recently testing sonar technology, reported Saturday. I saw something that was not normal, Atkinson told the station. Imagery resembled the Piper Comanche 250 that crashed on New Year's Day in 1965 after colliding with another small plane that was able to land at an airport. Remains of the Piper pilot were recovered at the time, but the bodies of the 3 passengers were not found. A local newspaper account at the time said divers had to work strictly by feel in murky water, and the weather turned bad with winds and waves. Authorities have not said whether the new information will prompt a new investigation. The lake, 25 miles east of Sacramento, is currently at just 37% capacity due to the drought. All right. KTLA out of Sacramento. Kathy, you being from California, of course, know that. So we've heard, once again, we hear so much about cars being found. We now have a plane that was in this lake for 56 years. But I think, Louise, good night. Thank you for taking part. Thank you for all your great comments tonight. Thank you for making some time in the early morning hours of the United Kingdom. Thank you, Louise. Certainly an interesting story. And I'm sure there are others, many lot like it. We get so caught up like Flight 370. Of course, there are way more private planes that have crashed and never been found than commercial airliners. Way more. But this story should show you something. Now, keep in mind, this was not just a crash of one plane. This was a midair collision where the other plane actually landed. The other pilot of the other plane lived, got to land it. So this person would have known where the crash happened, where they collided, and they would have known it was over this lake. So they would know to look in this lake for this plane, but it still took 56 years and by accident to find it. So then I want you to think about then a disappearance like Jason Landry. Also a situation where we know where he was coming from. We know where he was going. We know where his car ended up. We know where his clothes were. We know a lot of these things, and still he hasn't been found. This is how hard searching can be. And I'm sure in this situation going back to 1965, now granted, they didn't have GPS back then, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of different things have changed. A lot of things have changed in aviation since 1965. But surely the pilot who landed could say, yeah, we collided over this lake. And if that plane did not land somewhere, it had to have gone into that lake, and still took 56 years to find it. So even where they know even though they know where a plane crashed, the area in which it crashed, it still took all this time to find it. Searching is tough. And this is once again one of those things that I don't think the public realizes. I think most people would think, well, if there's a midair collision and one of the pilots landed, all they have to do is go right back out to where right below where the midair collision happened, and they're going to find the other plane. You'd think, but that's not what happened. By the way, before we go, I want to remind everybody before you go, please give this video a thumbs up. Have not mentioned that in a while since the beginning of the program. So please give this show a thumbs up before you leave on your device, whatever device you are using. Marlene says, I thought KTLA was an LA5, was LA5 is. I don't know what that means. Boston says to Marlene, do you think Brian S. is still out there alive? Boston, I'll just tell you what I wrote in the Patreon blog, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. If you'd like to read what I have to say about each of the disappearances that we've covered since 2017. Boston, I have to be very honest. I think Brian died that night. I think that, I don't think it was foul play. In fact, I went even as so far as to say that I could be convinced that it was suicide. So I realize a lot of people, circumstantial evidence that he's still out there alive somewhere, but it after a while, you hear so many stories about this person, about that person. Seeing him, a person who looks like him, all these, and none of it ever leads anywhere. It just gets me to thinking that none of it's true, and, he's not. This goes back to what I was saying before about people walking off. We don't know what was in Brian's head. We just know what was going on in his life, and it does not seem to me that a lot of positive things were going on. His mother just died. I know what it's like to lose a mother, okay? But there were a lot of other things going on with him. He was doing, he was in a career. He was going to school. It doesn't sound like he wanted to do that. He was late to his mother's funeral. I could never. My dad would have shot me if I showed up late to my mother's funeral. Would have shot me dead in front of everybody. As well, he would have a very good reason to do that too. I think there was just a lot of things going on with Brian, and that was just the night. I think that was just the night. And I realized that it's been what you might call cottage industry for many people, to get attention for their own particular podcast and everything. But that's what I like so much about Kelly Bruce. She's just going about it like any other disappearance out there. And that's why she was on the program. Yeah. Boston said, thank you. Very generous. Happy to answer that, Boston. You're welcome. Thank you for the contribution tonight through the super chat. You're very generous. Thank you, Boston. Thank you. Pleasure to answer your question at the same time, Marlene. Boston, I listened to your podcast on them twice. Thanks, Ed, for answering the question. It's just an opinion, Boston. You know me. I think people know me. I don't get into arguments with people about theories. Okay, I don't do that. We could talk about the facts and how we interpret them, and I can ask, well, don't you think? And that person might ask me, well, don't you think? But I just don't get in arguments with people. What's funny to me is since the episode came out, a few people have privately asked me what happened, and when I gave them my opinion, they tell me I'm crazy. It's like, oh, you can't really believe that, do you? Oh, come on. Then why'd you ask? I don't get it. Why did you ask if you weren't going to like my answer? I just don't get it. So now it is in LA. Okay. So that is the story. Once again, if you want to check it out, I think it's made the rounds everywhere about this small plane. And I would certainly like to cover a disappearance eventually about a small plane that went missing with people in it. You know, of course, we've done Ben Charles Padilla or Padilla in Africa, Flight 370. I'm certainly open to covering a disappearance of a smaller plane that went off the radar somewhere. I'm certainly interested in that. One more question, and then we'll get to this Friday's episode. And it's off the topic of true crime, but it is one of my favorite topics. Diane asked me, what is the secret to preparing the perfect chicken wing? Well, some of you, I know many of you follow me privately on Facebook, and you know that when I'm cooking chicken wings, I always make it a point to take a picture of the product before, the product after, or during the cooking and everything. It's the only thing that I make. It's the only thing I cook. So I have to take great pride in it. And, you know, I've learned to do it over the past year. And I do fry them. These are not, you know, baked or anything like that. These are fried. I go get the oil. I put it in the pot. I heat it up eventually to 360 degrees. It takes about a half hour to get there. I cut up the wings myself. I dry them off, put them in the oil. For the flats, it's about 15 minutes. For what the little parts that look like the legs, it's a little longer because they're a little thicker. So I cook them, you know, differently. I cook all the legs together and then all the flats together. Diane, what I would say to you is that you got to get the skin right. All right. I don't do any breading. I think it's easy to get the meat inside properly done. I think it's easy to get the right sauce, whatever you're into, really hot sauce or garlic or barbecue. I think that's easy to do. But I think the real key to a good chicken wing is the crispy skin. And what I've found is that the best way to get the crispy skin, and I don't usually do this, but you cook the wings, you do them, you cook them as if you are going to eat them. So 15 to 18 minutes. You take them out of the pot, you dry them off, get all the oil and everything off of them. You put them in Ziploc bags, you freeze them. I'm serious. You freeze them. And then next day or whenever you're ready to eat them, you take them out and you once again pour the oil, get it up to 360 degrees, but you don't, of course, keep them in for 15 to 18 minutes anymore. You only keep the chicken wings in there for about 4 minutes. So it's real fast. Get it up to 360, throw the wings, maybe 8 or 9 at a time, in there for about 4 minutes. You take them out, dry them off. And so it's kind of like a double frying them. And when you do that, the meat is still very good. That's a long enough time for the meat to get soft and be warm, hot. You're nothing dangerous. You're going to get sick. But what it does in refrying them, it really makes the skin a lot crisper. So you get that nice outer crunch, but then the great chicken inside. And it's very hard to do that when you cook them and eat them at the same time. It's very hard to get that skin like that. Just throwing them in, having them take them out, drying them off, putting them in sauce. The skin will still be okay. But when you double fry them, the skin, the crunchiness is much better. It's an overall process. It's harder, etc. But to me, the skin being crisp, I can go to a lot of restaurants, like where I go to play trivia. They make fine chicken wings. Great sauce, great meat. They're nice and large, very nice. But none of them get the skin crispy like I can get mine at home. That's the big thing that's missing. So that's what I would tell you. It's the double frying of the skin, Diane, that's the secret to really preparing that good chicken wing. Marlene says, love wings, Ed. Fried the best, and my homemade ranch dressing sounds good. Boston says, yummy, and now I'm hungry. I learned to do that just by watching some YouTube videos. Went and bought a pot, got all the stuff, and it's fun now. I'd maybe cook them once every 2 weeks or something, but that's the thing. Getting that skin right is really that extra. It takes the wing from being like a B plus to an A, my opinion. Crime and food, my two favorite things. Have you tried an air fryer for your wings? Not doing an air fryer, Linda. That's just, I'm old school. I'm just old school. My sister says you shouldn't fry them in that oil. You're going to die. You're going to have a heart attack and everything. I'm not going to use an air fryer. Got to do it the old fashioned way. That's, I'm going to try it. Sounds yummy. It's good, Gail. You got to try it. But no, I'm not going to use an air fryer, Linda. I like to do things the old fashioned way. So let's move on to this, being that I've been doing this for 2 hours. This Friday, the disappearance of Julianne Jaillet, Jaillet. She disappeared somewhere around June 1st of 1985 from Bellevue, Washington. Her daughter, Tamara McAdams, is the guest. She did a great interview. We did the interview on Sunday. And the episode's title is Miles Away. And the reason is this. Julianne was married. She was living with the guy. His name is Ian. They had been married for about 4 or 5 months, but they had known each other for quite a while. And she lost touch with her family. Her family hadn't heard from her in a while. And on June 11th of 1985, they finally reached Ian, and he said they got into a fight and she left. Common story, right? I was just talking about Angela Green, Marion Hurley, Rosemary Rapp, all and many others, these women who have disappeared and under similar circumstances. The guy says, I don't know. She just walked off. Well, in Julianne's, what makes this unique in a way, and the reason it's called Miles Away is because on June 14th, so 3 days after her family got in touch with her husband, 3 days after that, her purse with stuff in it was found on the 22nd or 26th floor of the MGM Hotel in Reno, Nevada, which is almost 12 hours away from where Julianne lived. Nobody ever reported seeing Julianne there. Nobody reported Ian's being there. There was no records of anybody that Julianne knew staying at the hotel, but that's where her purse ended up. And whoever worked there ended up shipping this purse back to Julianne's family by looking in her purse and seeing her ID, and her ID still had her old address on it. So that's how the purse got back into the hands of her family. And the police eventually took possession of that purse, and seemingly all these years later, they still have it. So if we are to believe the foul play, Julianne met with foul play, it seems then that somebody drove 12 hours to the MGM Grand Hotel in Reno, went up to the 26th floor, put the purse there like on a table or something, like by the elevator, went back downstairs, got back in the car, and drove back to Bellevue, Washington. That's what we are being asked to believe, whether you believe that or not. And that's why this episode is being called Miles Away, because the biggest piece of evidence in Julianne's disappearance is her purse, which was discovered miles away. So once again, Julianne Jaillet, Jaillet, disappeared from Bellevue, Washington, somewhere around June 1st of 1985. Her daughter, Tamara McAdams, is the guest. The episode is called Miles Away. A lot of people leaving, got to go to bed. Charlotte, Boston. Charlotte, good night, Charlotte, everyone. Okay. Well, I'm going to be getting out of here too. So what did we do tonight? We talked about disc golf, of course. Always got to talk about that. Talked about the Loki TV series on Disney Plus. It's pretty good. Continuing to manage my weight, manage my diet. I'm looking pretty good. Starting to listen to all the old Led Zeppelin albums again. Do not forget my friend Suzanne's show, Suzanne's Saturday Night Scares on Amazon Prime. Give it a nice review, please. Englebert Paul Season 2, Volume 2 book is now out on Amazon. Dr. Telesco, Nieko Lisi, Jody Husentrut, University Talks that are trying to line up. Marge asked a fantastic question about posters getting ripped down, talked about this plane being found from 1965, took questions from Jill, Ryan, Elena, Linda, and Diane, and then finished it up with this Friday's episode, The Disappearance of Julianne Cecilia. That's all I got. I did this without Cherie being the moderator, but I surely will love to have her back next week. That's all I got. Keep your head on a swivel. You'll hear me on Friday. Good night, everyone.